Good morning. As we enter into our third week of Easter this morning, we come to a passage similar to the ones that we read last week and that we'll continue to read throughout Easter, of the disciples meeting with Jesus in these different spaces after his resurrection. And I think each of these different encounters teach us a little bit more about the life of the disciples after Jesus' resurrection and how his relationship with each of them adjusts to this new understanding of his resurrection. So this week we have the story of the road to Emmaus. So we have these two people walking along, talking about all of these things that had happened, and then Jesus comes along and asks what they're talking about. But they don't recognize him. And I think this story is so relevant to our journey right now during this pandemic. Because it's not only that Cleopas and his companion are walking along the road to Emmaus, just traveling. They're going to find a sense of safety. Much like the disciples last week, they were locked away because they were afraid. And so I think of these two disciples who are also afraid but have to get home. And so they're going from Jerusalem to their home, to this place of safety. And not only that, but they're also going to this place to understand what it means to be in this new normal, which for them is still in a pre-resurrection understanding. They've just come from seeing Jesus die, and so they're still in this understanding that Jesus hasn't been resurrected, even though they've been told that, the tomb is empty and that the women had seen Jesus, that no, they're still living pre-resurrection. And so they're on this road and they're going towards this place of safety and looking for what it means to be in this new normal. And I think in a lot of ways, that's the world that we're living in right now too. We're finding places of safety and we're learning what it means to live in this world of a new normal. And so in comes Jesus. In the story, Jesus comes to them and says, "What are you talking about?" And I love their response because they say, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" Like, all this stuff is going on. How do you not know what has just happened? And Jesus' response to them is, "What things?" And so they go on to talk about how Jesus of Nazareth was a prophet and mighty in word and deed, and then was handed over to be condemned to death and crucified, and they had hoped that he would be the one to redeem Israel. And beside all this, it's been 3 days since this took place, and then the women were at the tomb and it wasn't there, and so they go through this whole story. But I think the amazing thing about this is, of course, Jesus knows what has happened there in these past 3 days. Because how could he not? How could anyone not know all of this that is going on? And I think that is so relevant right now because I think it could be really easy to look at our neighbor and say, how have you not heard what is going on in our world? Because we all know what's going on. We know that there's a pandemic and that people are sick, that people are scared, that people are at home or not at home because they're an essential worker. But Jesus here, even though he knows what has happened in these past few days, asks what things? Because he wants to know what the disciples' experience is. Experiential storytelling is so powerful. To hear another person's story and understand how they experience and live embodied in the world can be such a powerful experience. And so Jesus, though he knows because he lived it, everything that has happened in these past few days, he asks them what things. And then hears from their point of view and their experience what things have been happening. And in this pandemic, the midst of everything that is happening with COVID, I think that's how we are called to treat our neighbors right now. Because of course they know the things that are happening. We all know that the news has different things every day to say, and that different states are doing different things, and there's always something new that we're learning in this state of uncertainty. But we don't know the experience of our neighbor. We only know the experience of ourselves. And so listening to the experiences of those who are doctors and nurses, or those living with a pre-existing health condition, those who are stuck at home alone, or who have family that are elderly and stuck at their house alone, or even knowing that others can hear our story too, is so important in this time where everything seems kind of out of place. And yet, by taking pieces of each other's stories, we can finally put them into place and create this new understanding and this new normal for the time being that we have. Because this journey is far from done. Just as they're having this conversation with Jesus, this conversation isn't happening at the end of their journey. It's happening while they're walking. And then, eventually Jesus says, oh, well, of course, this was supposed to happen, and explains all of this to them. And then they get to their house, and knowing that this is a place of safety and that it is almost evening, they ask Jesus to come back home with them. And they get to the house and understand that it is Jesus after he breaks bread and blesses it and gives it to them, and then vanishes. And this is where we get the line, were not our hearts burning within us as we were walking with him? And my hope is that though the world is chaotic, and though our stories are different and our experience of this pandemic is different, that we can draw on those moments where we can feel God burning within us, feel the Holy Spirit burning within us. Because that's a reminder that Jesus is walking this road with us, just like he walked the road to Emmaus with our two companions this day, and like he does with us every single day, and will walk with us to our destination of this safety, of this new normal that will eventually come out of everything right now. For now, we continue to have moments that feel like Jesus is present with us, and maybe somewhere we don't feel it as much. But this can be a reminder that even the simplest of things can remind us, oh, I remember now. I remember that feeling. I remember seeing this. I remember hearing this. I remember experiencing God's presence with me here and now. So I invite you this next week to take a couple minutes, either a couple times or every day, and think about the day before or the week before, and the moments where you felt the Holy Spirit burning within you, or where you felt that you heard someone else's experience. You asked them what things have been happening. This road that we're on to safety or a new normal will continue, and Jesus promises post-resurrection to keep appearing to us and to walk with us on our way. And so we can hold fast in this hope of life and resurrection that Jesus promises to us as we're walking along this road, from start to finish, sharing our life and our experience and uplifting one another while feeling Jesus and the Holy Spirit burning within our hearts for the days to come. Thanks be to God. Amen.